As I just travelled around, what you would find is that the Anglican Church, right back then, so we're talking sort of 15, 16 years ago and before that, was consistently using lay people to reach new areas of the country that hadn't been evangelized yet. And so, I remember one particular guy in Malawi, a guy called Martin Malaka. He would uh, he was selling shoes on the side of the road. He would sell shoes until he'd earned enough money to pay what his family needed for that day or that week, and he'd do that in the mornings, and then he would pack up his stand, and then he would go and do evangelism and church planting in the afternoon. And he had no resource, he had nothing at all, but he just had a love for Jesus and a desire to share Jesus with others and to form church wherever that took place. And then we provided him some resources, and he began to actively and systematically begin to do that. Yeah, I remember Anna. She did the Rooted in Jesus course one year, and then we went back a couple of years later to visit her, and this was in Malawi, and she just somehow, out of going on this discipleship journey herself and learning how to lead a small group in a Bible study and in prayer and in praise and learning how to do that, she thought we could do this in the prison. And African prisons are not nice places. And she, as this single woman, so she must have been in her 50s, I think, decided to go into the local prison and to lead a Bible study group. And she saw, in effect, two churches, as it were, planted in this prison that were just of people coming to faith again and again and again, and her leading them on into discipleship and following Jesus. And and the thing that wasn't so much that lots of people got converted and in prison, it was more what was happening in Anna, that as an ordinary person who began to read the Bible and realize how to have a relationship with God and the Holy Spirit and be led by Him, and she then senses a call to a place that she would never ever have thought of going before. So that's birthed in her by the Holy Spirit, and God gives her a desire and a compassion for these prisoners that she never had before. And so that's coming from Him. And then only He, in His grace, would know that she's the person to reach these prisoners who He loves so much and whose lives have been devastated in different ways, so that they could come to know Him in the midst of their darkest days. And she's willing to follow that call and discover God use her in the most extraordinary way that no human being would have seen that in her, but only God could have done that. And I think that's the thing that inspires me for Myriad in England is I think there are so many Annas in the church. I think there are so many people who don't yet know what God has in mind when He made them and when He brought them to know Him, and the gifts that He's put in them by the Holy Spirit and the understanding of how He's wired them means that He knows that they could do so much more for Him and see so much more fruit in His kingdom and in His church than they could ever ask or imagine at the moment, in terms of that Ephesians 3 verse. And so we're hoping that in Myriad we might just say, and we have this on the video, so this is our little phrase, um, which is all about could I be used by God to do that? Could God use me to reach these people or see a church form in a new way for that community? And and that's what we're excited about. So I've got a story about a friend of mine called Sarah, if that's all right. We launched Myriad, and there is uh, a member of Holy Trinity Leicester, where I was still vicar, called Sarah. She is an extraordinary person. She is the head of the mathematics department for a further education college. but she's felt called by God to live on this really deprived estate. And she's lived there for 10 years, although she could afford a much more expensive house, but she feels called there. And she has done fantastic work. So she's just about to launch a community shop to create a centre and a place where people can have access to goods and fresh food and things like that. She's currently running a a tomato growing competition. She's given out seeds and fertilizer to improve people's nutrition and to teach them how to grow vegetables. She runs community events and fun days and all kinds of things. And she knows something like 17 households personally where they just welcome her in. She is just the salt and light of that community. But when she heard about Myriad, she came to me and she said, John, could I form a church for this community? Because I've got 5 women who already really they've come to faith and they're reading the Bible with me and we're talking about Jesus. And I've got these 17 households that I'm witnessing to, but they rarely leave the sort of the half-mile sort of diameter of this very poor estate. Very few of them are in regular work, and they'll never come to Holy Trinity, which is sort of 2.5 miles away. Could I be used by God to form a church? And the thing for me is I want to be able to say, yes, Sarah, yes, you can, because you're exactly why I think we need to do this. Because me trying to go and do church for those people just feels like everything they experience in the whole of their lives, which is middle-class people who've got expertise and skills and abilities, come in and tell them what to do. But actually, Sarah, who they know loved them deeply, doing church and helping them to be church is totally transformational, and it's inclusive and it's empowering and it's invitational. It's not in any way a sense of somebody else imposing it on them. And that's why it needs to be Sarah leading it, not me as the priest. And yet before, even though she was in our church, even though we've done lots and lots of mission and lots of church planting, she never thought it could be her before. And then she hears about Myriad and she goes, oh, yeah, maybe it could be me. And so, for the Annas or for the Sarahs, that's why we think that Myriad is something that God is really wanting us to offer to the church and help the church to work out how to do in a safe and good way